Most writers think character arcs are about change, where a timid character becomes brave, a selfish character becomes generous, a bitter character learns to forgive, and yes, those transformations do happen. But they aren't actually what makes a character arc compelling. In fact, I'd like to argue that the most memorable character arc isn't about change at all. It's about truth. Or more specifically, it's about the struggle between what a character believes and what reality is actually trying to teach him or her. Once you understand this, character arcs become a lot easier to write. I'll be going over several of these steps. Welcome to the Mythic Observatory, where we explore the hidden architecture of fantasy story structure and storytelling, and uncover principles that make worlds, characters, and stories resonate long after the final pages are read and your readers shut your book. Be sure to like, comment, and share so others can find this material as well. Let's start with human psychology and the fact that we are meaning-making creatures. Well, what do I mean by that? Meaning-making. In a nutshell, it means we create story. When something bad happens, that could be good too, but when something bad happens, we don't just experience the event. We are compelled to explain it, create a story around it, explain what happened, what that meaning behind the event really is, and hence the meaning making. We also can create our own personal cause and effect. We take the meaning behind what happened and we turn it into a belief. Someone betrays us. Maybe we decide that trust is dangerous. This becomes our belief, and we live life making sure that we are keeping ourselves safe by not trusting. It begins with their identity, that protective candy coating, for want of a better term here, that has probably been shaped by fear, wounds, and or limiting beliefs. It also can go by culture and also family dynamics, but beneath this identity is who the character is, or rather, who they can become. It is their more authentic version. So, plot and why it exists. First up, let me say that plot and character arcs are inseparable. And in good stories that stick with you years after the pages have been closed to that book, you still recall it. Yes, we do see writers that want to separate plot and character arcs, and in some ways it's easier to explain what the two of them are. However, when they stay separate, this is where character arcs can go wrong. I mean, yes, plot is what happens, and characters, it's who someone is. But good stories has something happening in the plot that presses up against that character's identity, their limiting beliefs, which force them to reevaluate what they believe. So, yes, they're going to want to cling to what's familiar. But after that character has been hit over the head X amount of times, they might start to reevaluate what their worldview is and what reality is desperately trying to tell them. Let's look for an example with Elizabeth Bennet from Pride and Prejudice. Not a fantasy story. However, this is a great example of how this works. At the beginning of the story, Elizabeth believes that she's an excellent judge of character. And in a way, yes, she truly is. And then we have the plot. And the plot is systematically attacking that belief of hers. Wickham deceives her. Darcy surprises her. New information repeatedly focuses her to reevaluate her assumptions. And take a moment to notice what's happening. The plot isn't all about balls and romantic settings. It's isn't just creating events. What it's doing, it's creating pressure. Pressure on Elizabeth's worldview, pressure on her belief structure. That is one of the hidden purposes of what plot is supposed to do in good stories. It is to challenge the stories that the protagonists tell themselves. We tell ourselves stories, our characters should be telling themselves stories. See, consider if a belief is never challenged, it remains invisible. The character can hold the same worldview forever if reality never pushes back. Why change? We have a story, though, when reality refuses to cooperate with the protagonist's limiting belief. Put in another way, the protagonist believes one thing and reality keeps presenting evidence for something else. Eventually, the tension in the story becomes so impossible to ignore. And keep in mind, character arcs feel satisfying not because the protagonist changes, it's because they struggle, they resist, they cling to old beliefs, they believe letting go feels dangerous. And we as humans, we resonate with that. We can relate to that. We recognize what it costs to change. See, we as the reader might not understand what it's like to face a dragon or to topple an evil overlord, but we understand fear. We understand self doubt. We understand when something feels too heavy to carry. We understand the temptation to stay the same. Okay, so if character arcs aren't really about change, it's about truth, how do we actually build them? How do we actually build these character arcs? And I say, let's start with one simple question. What belief is helping your protagonist survive? Now, notice I'm not asking, what flaw do they have? And I didn't ask how they'll change. I asked at the beginning of the story, what do they believe? Because every compelling character arc begins with a belief. Next, remember that whatever it is that they believe, it came from somewhere. Okay, so it came from a wound, it came from a betrayal, it came from something bad, it came from culture, it came from their family, it came from somewhere. And at some point in your character's life, that belief helped them to survive. And that's important because good, compelling character beliefs are rarely completely wrong. In fact, they generally contain a piece of truth. The problem is that your character has taken that partial truth and built an entire worldview around it. And now that worldview is limiting them. That's the first piece of their arc, the belief. The second piece is pressure. So you want to consider what scenes can you have in your story that will start putting pressure on their belief. You're not asking, oh, well, what happens next? You are asking, how can I put pressure on that belief? See, if your protagonist believes that they can only rely on themselves, you need to give them a goal that they can't achieve by themselves. Introduce allies they don't trust. Create situations where refusing help creates consequences. Yes, do allow their independence to work sometimes. Then gradually make it fail. And notice what's happening here. Your plot is no longer a random collection of events. It's a machine designed to test a worldview. Every ally, every setback, every temptation, every victory, every failure, all of it is applying pressure. And until that pressure reaches a breaking point and your protagonist can no longer avoid the writing on the wall that their worldview does not serve, and as that is coming up for them, how are they reacting? Are they clinging to their old belief even though they're starting to realize it's not working? Or do they decide to actually start embracing the deeper truth? And this is the moment many stories call the dark night of the soul, the crisis, the moral choice, but whatever name you prefer, this is where character arcs are won or lost. The choice for them should be difficult. In a way, the old belief should feel safe, feel familiar. There should be compelling reasons for them to still cling to the old beliefs. And there should be compelling reasons for your protagonist to choose the new way. But old way or new, all of this is what creates emotional power. For example, that worldview that trust is dangerous. The question shouldn't be, oh, can your protagonist save the world? Save the kingdom? No. The question should be, will they trust others enough so they can save it? And when that character finally makes that choice, transformation occurs. Whether you have a positive character arc, negative character arc, or even a flat one. And let me go into that just a tiny little bit, okay? Because you probably already know what a positive arc is. They choose the new belief. The negative, they choose the old belief, and it's usually a tragedy. For flat arcs, though, characters already possess an important truth. The story isn't built to transform them, it's to help transform others in the story because the protagonist with a flat character arc remains steadfast. They generally embody a truth that others have forgotten or they have rejected or they've failed to understand. Okay, so let's back up for a moment. We'll back up to transformation, which is the third piece in a character arc. Transformation, because a character arc starts with a belief and then the pressure, and finally the third part, transformation. But there's a difference between transformation and outcome, and a difference with starting with transformation and starting with belief first. So let's use Selena Sardothian from Sarah J. Maas's Throne of Glass. If we start with the transformation, we might say, well, by the end of the series, Selena learns to trust others, to accept their help, and to embrace her true identity. Now, what we're doing is we're stating an outcome, basically saying that she learns to trust others by the end of the story. It's kind of like us saying that a marathon runner crossed the finish line. It's true, yes, but it tells us almost nothing about the journey it took to get there. And that journey is what makes the character arc meaningful. The more interesting question is, why doesn't she trust people in the first place? And this might be a bit of a spoiler for some. The story's been out for a bit, but when we meet Selena, she has been imprisoned in horrible conditions. She has survived betrayal, she's survived violence and loss. Her experiences have made her believe that dependence is dangerous and vulnerability invites pain. She is protecting herself in a manner that many trauma survivors can actually relate to, with that limiting belief of, I can only rely on myself. That belief is not irrational, and in some ways, that belief has protected her, helped her to survive. And then we have the plot that begins, and it begins applying pressure. She is forced into alliances she doesn't want. She interacts with people such as Kale and Nehemia, who repeatedly demonstrate loyalty and compassion. She sees others risk themselves for her, and she keeps encountering evidence that contradicts her worldview. Despite all that, she does not change immediately. She keeps secrets. She pushes people away. She attempts to shoulder burdens all by herself alone. And even when she starts caring about others, she often defaults to self reliance because it feels safer, much safer than it is to trust. The story continues to add more pressure. Relationships deepen. We see sacrifices being made, losses occurring, the consequences of isolation becoming increasingly more painful for her. Eventually, Selena must decide whether she will continue carrying the world alone or if she'll allow others to stand beside her. So, no, this isn't just a Selena learns to trust. Instead, the readers go on a journey where they feel and they understand why trust feels dangerous. They witness her belief. They experience the pressure. They feel the cost. So when transformation finally occurs, it feels earned. It feels real because it's been built on a foundation of struggle, sacrifice, and choice. And this is where we find readers caring about the story because we go on that kind of journey ourselves. So, anyway, if this sparks something, please consider checking out my Substacks with the companion essays on this topic. I have secret behind every compelling character arc and also the 3 layers of character arc, belief, pressure, and transformation, where I go deeper into this along with the steps of how to create a really dynamic character arc. The links are down below. Until next time, may your steel be tempered, your roots unbroken, and your path rise to meet you.